He tried to kick me out of the house I already owned. No yelling, no cursing, just a manila folder sliding across the Formica table. The same table we bought when avocado green was still fashionable. "Pack your things," he said. "You've got 2 weeks." His voice, calm, detached, like the day he took care of the taxes and forgot to list my name. But here's what his lawyer never saw. The deed I signed back in '89, notarized when signatures were trusted more than intentions. The trust I built from my mother's inheritance, the one he assumed paid for our grandkids' college. The ironclad clause even his attorney wouldn't dare challenge. Funny how he always called me the quiet one. So I let him deliver his lines, let him rehearse his little power play, because tonight, at our 40th anniversary dinner, between the dry chicken and frosting that spelled forever in shaky blue script, I'll stand, unfold the deed, and remind him, I don't need to raise my voice. I already won. Before the deed, before the folder, there was a ladder, a can of paint, and 2 people who believed in forever. We bought the house in 1985. 2 stories, 1 fireplace, 0 insulation. He held the ladder. I painted the shutters. We couldn't afford professionals, so we became them. He called it sweat equity. I called it home. After my second miscarriage, I gave up my teaching job. He said we'd try again, but we never did. So I learned how to stretch 1 paycheck across 5 weeks, how to patch clothes, clip coupons, make meatloaf out of pantry scraps. He worked late. I kept the lights on, and my doubts quiet. "Let me handle the money," he always said. "I'll take care of you." And I wanted to believe him. I did. Even when the mortgage refinance had only his name. Even when I found the life insurance didn't list me. Even when I asked, gently, why my name never showed up on the taxes. And he laughed, kissed my forehead, and said, "Don't worry, babe. It's all ours." But somewhere between year 25 and the second secret bank account, I stopped believing. And that's when I started studying how trusts work, how to shield assets from probate, how to vanish from a deed without ever leaving the house. Because one day I realized I might need protection from the man I built it all with. The quieter I became, the more invisible he thought I was. But silence isn't surrender, it's strategy. And the best strategies, you don't reveal them too early, which brings us to that Tuesday night. Community meeting, coffee in hand. He frowned at the documents and muttered, "My name's starting to disappear from the paperwork." I didn't flinch, didn't blink, just sipped and thought. So, he finally noticed. It started with a fence, an ugly one, aluminum, dented, leaned just enough to bother him. We were at the neighborhood committee meeting, 4th Tuesday of the month. He loved those, wore his old college blazer like a badge of civic honor, sipped lukewarm coffee from styrofoam, and held court like he owned the block. That night, he stood up to complain about property lines, but somewhere between the zoning codes and a joke about gophers, he paused. Then came the line. "I tried to file the renovation contract, but something's off. My name's not showing on the title anymore." He laughed, nervous, the kind of laugh men use when they want the room to laugh with them, before anyone starts asking questions. There was a beat of silence. Then someone rustled a plate of cookies. Another neighbor jumped in. "Let's move on to landscaping before we run out of time." But the seed had been planted, and it was growing. I didn't say a word, just stirred my coffee, lips still, eyes down. But inside, I felt it, the shift. He'd touched the edge of something he wasn't meant to find. The trust, the title transfer, the years of planning I'd done in silence. He didn't understand it yet, not fully, but he knew something had changed. That night, he didn't speak much at dinner, pushed his peas like a boy, waiting on a punishment he didn't know he'd earned. And for the first time in years, I wasn't the one waiting. He was used to being the one in control, used to asking the questions, used to me having no answers, but this time, he didn't even know what question to ask. Not yet. The first time I visited a trust attorney, I wore a church cardigan and brought banana bread. Not for strategy, just habit. I sat there, purse in my lap, hands folded, looking like someone asking about a will. And I was. At least, that's how it started. But 5 minutes in, I asked the real question. How do I make sure my house can't be taken from me, not even by my husband? He blinked, once, twice, then leaned forward like a man who'd heard that question before, but not often. He didn't ask if I was sure, didn't press, just pulled out a yellow legal pad and started listing options. That's how the trust was born, titled under my full maiden name, shielded from public searches, protected by a quiet network of clauses and conditions. I paid the fees from my birthday account, the one where I saved every check from Aunt Elaine, every refund, every forgotten rebate. It took 2 years to fund it, 3 signatures, and a notary who asked, "Are you sure you want to do this without your spouse present?" I said yes, and signed with the steadiest hand I'd had in years. He never knew. Not when we renovated the kitchen, not when we fought about the thermostat, not even when he brought up his retirement options and talked about selling the house to move closer to his daughter. Because legally, it wasn't his house anymore. It hadn't been for 3.5 years. I didn't tell him, not because I was scared, but because I needed to be sure. Sure he'd show me who he really was when he thought I had nothing. And sure enough, he did. What he didn't know, what he still doesn't know, is that the trust has one more clause, one final line he'd never guess, even if he had the paperwork in front of him. And that part, that's the part I'm saving for the anniversary. He found the envelope 3 days later, not the trust, just a copy of the county record, tucked behind our water bill, like I'd forgotten to file it. I hadn't. He waited until I sat down with my tea, didn't slam it, didn't shout, just slid it across the table, same way he once passed me a Valentine's Day card, except this time, no poem inside. "Tell me this isn't what I think it is," he said. I looked down at the page, then at him, then I folded the paper, nice and neat, and said, "It's exactly what you think it is." His jaw clenched. I watched a vein twitch in his temple. For a second, I thought he might cry. For another, I thought he might leave, but he stayed. And when he finally spoke, his voice cracked. "After everything I gave you, you went behind my back?" I took a slow sip of my tea. "No," I said. "I went in front of you. You just weren't looking." He laughed, bitter and small. "So this is who you are now?" "No," I said. "This is who I've always been. You just didn't think to ask." He didn't respond, just stared at the fireplace like it owed him answers. And maybe it did. It was the last thing in that house he'd actually built with his hands. I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. Because he still hadn't asked the one question that mattered, the one line he hadn't seen yet, the one clause that turned everything upside down, especially for him, and I wasn't going to give it away. Not yet. He stopped speaking to me for 4 days, not out of anger, out of uncertainty, like a man who'd wandered into a room and couldn't find the exit. I used the silence, not to punish, to prepare. I met with my lawyer at the coffee shop by the train station, the one with no cameras and no regulars. I wore sunglasses, a scarf, not because I was hiding, because I was making space to think. We reviewed the documents line by line. The trust was airtight. The deed transfer had cleared, but it was time to move from private protection to public clarity. I want it in writing, I told her, all of it, the dates, the funding sources, the notarized timeline. She nodded. "You planning to file something?" "No," I said. "I'm planning to show something." That's when I scheduled the event. 40 years. That's how long we'd been married. And that's the number on the invitation. Join us in celebrating 40 years of love, laughter, and legacy. He was thrilled, said it would clear the air, even bought new cufflinks. I let him think it was his idea, because the best reversals, they happen when the other person still thinks they're holding the pen. I ordered flowers, finalized the catering, worked with my lawyer to compile a quiet little packet, one for each table, bound, numbered, chronological. It wasn't revenge, it was record-keeping. I wanted people to understand, not just what he tried to take, but what I'd already protected. And as the RSVPs rolled in, neighbors, friends, even his daughter from out of state, I realized this wasn't just about the house anymore. It was about the story. And for once, I was going to be the one to tell it. The night of the party, I wore blue, not navy or slate, but that soft cornflower shade he used to say made me look almost too kind. The house was glowing, candles lit, napkins folded, shrimp cocktail chilling in glass trays we only ever used for funerals and fundraisers. He was beaming, laughing too loud, gripping every shoulder like he was running for office. At 7:42, just after the toast to 40 years of teamwork, I tapped my spoon against the side of my glass. People quieted. Some raised their phones. He smiled at me like I was about to read him a poem. Instead, I unfolded the packet, one at every table, sealed in parchment paper, labeled Legacy. For those of you who know our story, I said, there's more you don't. I walked them through it, line by line, how the house was purchased, transferred, protected, how I'd saved, planned, prepared, how trust isn't something you ask for. It's something you prove you can hold. The room shifted. Chairs creaked. One woman gasped. He didn't move, not even when I opened the final page. The clause. In the event of marital separation, misuse of marital funds, or attempted seizure of property, I read, the trust defaults to a single beneficiary, Margaret Jean Holloway. Me. He blinked. Once. I never wanted to do this publicly, I said, but since we built our life in front of all of you, I figured the truth deserved the same stage. Then I raised my glass, not to him, to myself. And in that silence, before the forks scraped plates, before someone cleared their throat to break the tension, I looked around the room and realized some people weren't shocked, they were relieved, because maybe they were living in a house like mine, just waiting for permission to take the story back. The first sound was a fork clinking against a glass. Then came the murmur, soft, staggered, like wind pushing through leaves. Nobody said my name, but they didn't have to. Some avoided my eyes, some nodded, barely, and some came up to me like I'd just pulled them from quicksand. I wish I'd done what you did, whispered Marianne from 3 houses down. I always wondered how you managed the bills, said Mr. Kaplan, who once told me I looked tired at the mailbox. He didn't say a word. My husband just stood near the punch bowl, eyes blank, fingers tapping the rim of a plastic cup. Our son asked if we could talk later. His wife didn't touch her cake. People didn't stay long. Nobody danced. But no one slammed a door either. No angry voices, just a shifting silence. And that silence? It said everything. The version of me they thought they knew, the quiet wife, the helpmeet, the homemaker. She didn't fit anymore. And for some, that was unsettling. For others, it was a relief. Because sometimes, when one person stands up, others realize they've been sitting for too long. Back in the kitchen, alone, I rinsed a plate and stared out the window. He was still outside, still standing where I'd left him, like he couldn't figure out what just happened. I dried the dish slowly, and for the first time in our marriage, he wasn't the one people were circling. They were watching me now, and the more they watched, the quieter he got. That night, the house felt too quiet, not peaceful, just emptied. The plates were washed, the chairs stacked, the packets, those neatly bound truths, sat unopened on the hall table, like wedding favors no one quite knew what to do with. I sat at the kitchen island, hands wrapped around a cup of chamomile I never drank, and for the first time in weeks, I let myself wonder, did I go too far? Was there a softer way, a quieter page I could have turned without folding the whole book? But the truth is, I had tried softness, I had tried waiting, I had tried silence as a form of love, and when that didn't work, I chose a different kind of silence, one that signed papers, one that built protections, one that didn't ask for permission to exist. I didn't want to humiliate him. I just wanted to exist in the light, because being invisible in your own life, that's the kind of loneliness that no one sees coming. People ask why women hide money, why they keep secrets, why they suddenly change at 60, 70, 72. It's not sudden, it's sediment, layer by layer, year by year, until one day the weight isn't something you carry, it's something you leave behind. That night, as I turned off the porch light, I didn't feel triumphant. I felt clear, and maybe that's all we're really after in the end. Not to win, not to prove a point, just to finally stop explaining ourselves to people who never asked what we needed in the first place. I didn't sleep that night, not from worry, just the kind of alertness that comes after holding your breath too long and finally exhaling. I made a cup of tea I didn't finish, sat on the back porch in my old robe, watched the sky shift from velvet to bruised blue. He never came outside, and I didn't go back in. Some stories don't end with a door slamming. Some just settle. A day later, I found one of the packets in the mailbox. No note, just the copy I'd left on our son's table, folded once, creased neatly down the center. I didn't call him, didn't ask what it meant, because maybe it wasn't for me to know. Maybe that's the thing about telling the truth out loud. You don't control how it lands. You just decide it's time. I've been thinking about that a lot, about timing, how women are told to wait for him to change, wait for the right moment, wait until the kids are older, the bills are lower, the fear is smaller. But the truth is, there's no perfect time to take your story back. There's just your time. Mine came at 70. Yours might come at 60 or 82 or on a Tuesday when the milk goes bad and you realize you're the only one who ever replaces it. If you're listening and wondering if you're too late, you're not. Not for your story, not for your voice, because trust isn't just something legal. It's the quiet belief that you still matter, even when no one's looking. And if you've been sitting quietly too long, maybe it's time to stand. So I'll ask you, have you ever held back to keep the peace? Have you ever made yourself smaller just to fit a role someone else wrote for you? If so, I see you, and you're not alone. Tell me your story in the comments or with someone you trust. And if this story made you feel something, share it with a friend, a daughter, a neighbor who still thinks she has to explain herself for wanting more, because maybe, just maybe, she's ready to take her story back too, and maybe it starts with hearing yours.